third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way in there and way out! Second
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. We get to talk about the season continuing. Something before the season we both predicted to not happen, and then changed our minds last week. And that was the case. The Phillies beat the Braves in 4. I said I thought the Phillies had a better chance to sweep that series than the Braves did. And honestly, if it wasn't for one stupid pitch that Austin Riley one-handed out of the stadium, or Michael Harris making an insane catch, that honestly might have been the case, because the Phillies dominated the Braves, and maybe not in the way we thought. I think I said that the offense was going to have to show up because the Braves were going to get their 4 or 5 a game. Well, the Braves got 8 in the 4 games. They averaged 2 runs a game, and I was listening to WIP on Friday. The 8 runs over the 4-game stretch, that was the lowest amount of runs the Braves scored over a 4-game stretch all season.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild to think about, kind of looking at the season that team, that offense had. But I think honestly we kind of saw hints at it in the games that the Phillies kind of played them in September, at least with some of their key guys. Like, they started, I think, kind of like we all assumed it was like that kind of crash course, like we were going to see them in the playoffs. And it seemed like Cotham and the pitching staff really made a concerted effort to get in on those scouting reports early, because it seemed like every game that they played in September against the Braves, whether he beat you or not, like, they were focused on, okay, we have to pitch Acuna inside. We have to set this up. We have to see if it works. And he got, in this series, a steady dosage of fastballs inside, and they really just neutralized Acuna and Olsen for the most part. The 2 big bats, the 2 top 5 MVP voting guys, they did a really good job of pitching to them and kind of making other guys beat you.
Yeah, Austin Riley honestly was the only Brave that showed up in this series.
That's
2 home runs, 3 RBIs, pretty much half of their offense in this series.
I don't know what it is, but even last year, Riley and d'Arnaud were really the only ones who hit in the DL or the NLDS last year too. I don't know if it was a similar thing where they kind of have the book on how to go after the Acunas and the Albies and the Olsens of that lineup, but it just seems like d'Arnaud kills them and Riley kills them, and that kind of stayed true throughout that series.
Yeah, and Rob Thompson actually insane job, especially in the 2 Ranger Suarez starts, using the bullpen, and just he kind of made sure that no one in the Braves lineup outside of, I guess, Nola start. There wasn't a lot of times where the Braves saw a pitcher twice, and they he did a good job to not try to go too far with guys. And I know Game 4 was wacky with the amount of guys that got the last out of 1 inning, then came in the beginning of the next inning and then couldn't get out of the inning. So then another guy had to come and finish the inning, and then that guy came up the next inning, and then he couldn't get out of the inning. It happened 3 times in that game. It was wacky. But
the kind of talking about Thompson though, that he did an incredible job managing arms and kind of keeping everybody fresh. But specifically that first game, obviously, we talked about at the start of the series, the goal was to, 1, split in Atlanta, and 2, figure out a way to split the Strider starts. Obviously, they ended up sweeping the Strider starts, but getting that first one in Atlanta and kind of checking both of those boxes while using 7 different arms or 8 different arms, whatever it was, to shut out that team was crazy. And obviously the pitchers have to go out and execute and make the pitches and everything. But the job that he did, kind of setting the tone for the series, managing it like it was an elimination game, kind of getting that first one, and then the pressure kind of falls off. Like, you already stole home field at that point. Game 2 is gravy, which was kind of the same thing as last year. And they somehow make those game 2s where you're trying as a fan not to get too worked up if they lose. They make those losses as excruciating as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thompson did a hell of a job this series, and he's proven over the last 2 Octobers that, knock on wood, he can be very trusted in those spots.
Yeah, I applaud them for sticking with the bit of losing every game too. They did it last year, not counting the wild card rounds.
I think
they lost game 2 in all 3 last year, all 3 of the extended series.
I think dating back to 2008, they're now 14-1 in their last 15 game 1s.
Yeah, they're incredibly good in game 1 and incredibly bad in game 2. I know they lost game 2 against the Cardinals too in 2011. So kind of that's a streak of 5 extended series losing game 2 in a row.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny. But really quick, just before we move on, I want to touch on the offense, because I guess this is to be expected in a playoff series, and obviously the sample size was pretty small, 4 games. But you either had guys that were prime Barry Bonds or Michael Martinez. There was really no in between with guys in this series. Bryce Harper, 3 home runs. Nick Castellanos, the first player ever in playoff history to have back-to-back 2 home run games. Trey Turner, 2 homers, which included a 4-hit game where he almost got the cycle. Those 3 went off. Brandon Marsh was pretty good. He hit a home run, had some nice hits. The other guys, boom, really bad series. Schwarber, really bad. Stott, little hit or miss. But they got through it though. But man, if Turner and Castellanos stay on this path, and I'll be honest, Schwarber did not show up until the CS last year anyway. People remember him having this insane playoff run. He hit 6 home runs in like 10 games between the CS and the World Series. It wasn't like it was over the stretch of the 4 series they played last year. It was literally just a burst of the 2 last series where he really went off. So if you get him there, thankfully the Braves pissed off Bryce Harper, which we get thank them for that. The Phillies fans also cracked Orlando Arcia. Like that guy is never coming back now. Like he's done. Like there's no coming back from what they did to him. Bryce Harper embarrassed the hell out of him. The Phillies pitching embarrassed the hell out of him, and the fan base literally cracked him to the point where he was like sticking his tongue at them. So they totally ruined a guy's career in the process.
And they, like, I don't know, obviously, like, Citizens Bank Park's the most absurd baseball stadium when it comes to playoff time and everything. But like, Ozuna hit 40 bombs this year, and as soon as he gets in Citizens Bank Park and the DUI chants start, the guy flails at every pitch, like he's not even in the same area.
He wants no part of being up there. He just wants to go back in the dugout and hide as the DH. He's so lucky he doesn't play the field.
We have Arcia's number and we have Ozuna's number when it comes to the Braves. And honestly, dude, Strider was in shambles when he was walking off the mound too.
Yeah, he couldn't. He was flabbergasted that Nick Castellanos hit his 100-mile-an-hour fastball to the moon.
What was that? I think that was the first extra base hit that Strider's ever given up off of 100-mile-an-hour or more.
Yeah, and I'll give Strider some credit. That was pitch like 99 for him, and he threw it at 100. Yeah. Like he was locked in from a physical standpoint. I think I thought.
When I saw 99 and 100 and 101 in the first inning, I thought it was going to be a long night.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, the Phillies had traffic early. They just couldn't get a run in. And then eventually Castellanos, the last thing I'll say about Castellanos, he did the 4 home runs in the 2 home games. And in both of those situations, he hit a home run where right in the inning after the Braves just took a 1-0 lead in both games. And that kept the crowd from getting out of the game. I know like one run's not allowed. They were both very early. I think the third or fourth inning, both times. But it is just that him being up, batting seventh, where maybe we'll talk about that for the next series. Maybe that changes. But him being down the lineup, he's up both times. And he came through, tied the game both instances. And like the Phillies in game one outscored the Braves 9-1 after his home run. And then they outscored them 2-0 after his home run. Both times he tied the game. So like his home runs obviously were big, but the timing of them was out of this world.
Yeah, and I know like we talked about it a lot when we signed him, the swagger that he brought and kind of the energy that he brings to a clubhouse. I did not really pencil in him being like team captain, spokesperson. Like every interview that this guy gives at this point is incredible, and it seems like obviously we saw kind of what he was about when he was in, even going back to the Detroit days, but mostly his Cincinnati year too.
Yeah.
We kind of saw the energy and the aura that he brings. But like the guy just seems like he was fit for the type of culture that the Phillies have now with Harper and that kind of core. And he's become one of like the model Phillies. And I didn't expect that when we signed him, and I sure as hell definitely didn't expect it after the year that he had last year. But it's probably been one of the most refreshing things of this season.
Yeah, and you know he's kind of had to take a lot of motivation. He was the last out of the World Series. He was the dude that that stood at the top step when the Braves celebrated the division in Citizens Bank Park. He's kind of taken in these moments, and I think it's like, you know, that's feeding him right now. He knows that he doesn't want to do it again. I think he understands that his year last year was, you know, for his standards, embarrassing. And he sees how much fun it is when you're doing good here and when the team's doing good. And I think it's really started to click for him, and hopefully it continues because they are going to need him to win 8 more games.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those guys that can get – he even said this in the playoffs last year. Like in the field, oftentimes he was – like in the regular season, he gets disinterested in kind of getting to the playoffs where every pitch matters and playing that type of defense. Like it just showed him how locked in you have to be for everything. Yeah. So in a sense for him, I feel like the Harper injuries kind of benefited him in like combination of going to the playoffs last year, because it just seems like he's been so locked in having to play 155, 160, however many games he's played in right field. Like he's just been so engaged for the entire season. And obviously being here for a year now, like he's much more comfortable. But I just think overall he's been much more locked in and kind of focused on the entirety of the season. Yeah,
definitely. I was going to say about him, I had one last point. It slipped my mind actually, but it was, he only struck out once in this series. Like his plate discipline was out of this world. I was shocked, but he was laying off the low and away sliders and turning on fastballs like it was nothing. I mean, the version we saw those last 2 games in Philly, and you know, even game 2, I mean, he drove that ball to the wall and he had some hard hits in that game. We have not, over that 3-game stretch, we have not seen him that locked in before in the 2 seasons he's been here. Like this is by far the most impressive 3-game stretch of his career with the Phillies, and it's at the right time.
Yeah, I mean this is the guy that Cincinnati saw for the entire season. This type of all-star power, like we've talked about this a lot, but what you get from him in the home run department is kind of extra. Like his slug comes with the doubles and stuff. But I mean, Cincinnati saw him hit 35 home runs in a very hitter-friendly park. So Citizens Bank Park's just as friendly, and we're kind of seeing him go on that sort of focused run that Cincinnati saw for an entire season, and it's definitely coming at the right time.
Yeah. So I have 2 more points on the NLDS before we get into this CS. But one, we've come a long way from Zach Eflin closing games in the playoffs last year. I'll say that much. This bullpen is awesome. I know Hoffman had the one rough moment with Riley. I mean, it was a bad pitch call. We talked about it. They should have went fastball. And, Riley just made an insane swing on that ball that he one-armed that out. It's hard to totally go against that. But other than that, like, Sir Anthony Dominguez got Ronald Acuna out 3 times in this series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he went off. Kimbrel, a little shaky with the walk and the whole Acuna thing, but he came through. Alvarado looked good. Soto had some moments, but he was good. Strom was strong. Kirkering was really good. They're 7 deep now, and I just did not expect that, especially after they didn't really make a move to improve that unit at the trade deadline. It's just all these guys are clicking at the right time. And secondly, Joan Rojas might not get a hit the rest of the playoffs, but it really doesn't matter. Everything hit the center field is an automatic out, including Acuna's ball in the 7th inning of Game 4, who had a chance. If that doesn't get caught, we're probably talking about the offseason right now. So, I just think those were 2 big things from last year that are different from last year. The bullpen is great, and they're actually like a legitimate defensive team.
Yeah. I mean, even I know a lot of us in our kind of line of communication, we were not very happy to see Strom coming out for the 9th, but the dude came in with guys on the corners up a couple runs and was literally like the most stress-free out. Pop out to second, pop out to shallow left, and then strike out. Like it was as stress-free as that type of situation could be. And he's had an up and down year. Obviously, he kind of carried us for that first little month when the starters weren't great and he was in the rotation. And then it just seemed like in the dog days he was getting teed off on. But I mean, that just goes to show you the depth, like you were kind of talking about with that bullpen. We have legitimate 3 or 4 options from both arm side. And it's like that type of depth in the playoffs, because each of them kind of has their own different thing. Like Soto's the velocity lefty with the slider. Alvarado's the velocity with the cutter. Like you have so many different mix and match formulas that you could kind of use to kind of piece together games like the Suarez games that we saw. And it's not like last year, while obviously Dominguez and Alvarado were on another world for a month until the World Series. Like you have so many more options in case one guy kind of slips up a little bit.
Yeah. I think from a matchup standpoint, it made more sense for him to go to Hoffman in that 9th inning with those guys on. But like Strom is just like the balls to the wall, dude. And I think considering the options Thompson had left in his bullpen, Strom was the right guy from the mindset of he's just going to go out there and pump strikes and he doesn't really care. So I that was a good call. I think they're honestly looking back at it. At first I was like, but now, you look at some of the other factors with that, it makes sense. The Kimbrel thing was interesting where he came in. He pitched with 1 inherited runner on base all season. And then in that game, he had a pitch with 2 on base.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
He couldn't do his little balk thing to move anybody along either, which I was worried about as far as him tipping pitches.
Yeah.
Also, an underrated thing going back to Kimbrel, like Kevin Pillar not scoring on that pass ball probably changed the complexion of the series.
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
then they probably would have pitched around Acuna because first base would have been open, and then you have Albies up with the bases loaded, who had a relatively good series. Like he had the RBI early in that game before, and he hit some balls hard throughout the course of the series. So like, shout out to Kevin Pillar, that probably saved the season.
Yeah, it honestly did. All right, so moving on, being the Braves again. So the Phillies are facing the team we actually thought they were going to face in the wild card round. Now they're doing it 2 series later, which I did not expect. But the Arizona Diamondbacks have not lost this postseason. They are 5-0. They swept the Brewers in Milwaukee, which I know Woodruff didn't pitch the one game, but still, that pitching staff to go in there and sweep them, I think, is incredibly impressive. And then, they swept the Dodgers. And I know the thing with the Dodgers is they're regular season merchants, and they are. Like, they have good depth that gets them through the season and helps them win 100 games, but, like, none of these dudes are dudes come playoff time. And their pitching is kind of brutal, but still, they swept the Dodgers. We're talking about an 84-win team that pretty much didn't win themselves into the playoffs. I'll say this is the Phillies from last year. Okay, this is a team that pretty much just lucked into being the team that had that did suck as bad as the other teams and got the last spot. And all of a sudden they're as hot as could be. This is interesting to me because they have good players. We know Corbin Carroll, Walker, the first baseman who we wanted after the whole Hoskins thing. And they have two really good starters in Zach Allen and Merrill Kelly. So both those guys have to come pitch in Philly this week. But yeah, I don't know. This is a unique, situation. On paper, I know the Phillies are the heavy favorite, and on paper the Braves or the Diamondbacks don't look like a really good team. But to me, they're just so happy to be here, I feel like, and are playing with house money. And they're a pretty young team with not a lot of playoff experience. I don't think they realize how big the moment they're in is, and it might work to their advantage. Ignorance is bliss with them, I feel like, in a sense.
Yeah, and I feel like I said this maybe a month or two ago, or a month ago before the playoffs started. I was just kind of looking at schedules, seeing how the wild card would shape up, and I saw the Diamondbacks' last series of the year where they could potentially have clinched was in Houston, like the Phillies last year.
Yeah.
They have those two studs at the top of the rotation, like the Phillies last year. Their lineup gets it done a little bit different. Well, we thought it did going into the playoffs, but now they're just mashing home runs. They hit 4 home runs in one inning last series. So, the similarities to the Phillies are definitely there. I don't think they have the star power, obviously, that Phillies team had last year, but they have really good players, and their Longoria might not be the big numbers guy, but he's kind of that clubhouse leader that they brought in, and he's been there before. Obviously 15 years ago, but he has played in Citizens Bank Park during the playoffs, so he kind of knows what that's all about. But I don't know. I was thinking about this last night. I kind of hate that we're actually the higher seed and have home field, because the whole formula has been, steal one and then get back home. And now Arizona has 2 really good pitchers. Obviously, we have Wheeler and Nola lined up, but they have 2 really good pitchers. So there's a real chance that they could steal one here, and then they have 3 in Arizona. Yeah. So the formatting here, I'd almost rather we don't have home field advantage. But just kind of looking at the pitchers and their careers as far as it pertains to us. Gallen started 4 games against the Phillies. He's 3-1 with a 2.2 in his career. In 24 innings, he's given up a few runs, 3 home runs, 24 strikeouts, and 9 walks. Kelly is 1-1 against the Phillies, 2.75 career ERA, and 19 2/3, 16 strikeouts, 2 home runs. His WHIP is below 1. Kind of looking at them at Citizens Bank Park, it was interesting. Gallen is a Philly kid. He's from Cherry Hill, in Jersey. He's 1-1 at Citizens Bank Park with a 4.38 ERA. In 12 innings, he has 11 strikeouts, and he gave up 3 home runs with a 1.6 WHIP. So he doesn't have a great track record in Citizens Bank Park. So that'll be interesting to see. He matches up with Wheeler in game 1. So that should be a very good game pitching wise. And Kelly only has 1 start at Citizens Bank Park, and he went 7 2/3 shutout with 5 strikeouts. So his 1 start there was good. Obviously, it wasn't in October. And as far as their kind of rest goes, since they swept, they'll both be on 6+ days. And if you're kind of looking at it in their tiers with 4 days, which is the normal rest, or 5 days, or 6 or more, 6 or more is actually their worst in terms of those tiers. Gallen has a 3.8 on 6 days rest. Kelly has a 3.5. So I guess if you're kind of cherry picking some things, you'd almost rather, I don't know if it's a Wheeler thing, because I know Wheeler hates that extra day of rest, but maybe it's one of those things. Maybe it just throws them off their rhythm, but it's a pretty big sample size. Kelly has 141 innings on 6 days or more, and he has a 3.5. He's 12-8 in those starts. So like it's not major, but it's definitely something to look at. And then obviously we won't see Fott in Philly. He'll be back in Arizona, and we didn't see him at all this year. But on 6 days rest, he's 1-3 with an 8.4 ERA. So he's been pitching good in the playoffs, but I kind of how you want to see. I wish we had him here in Philly because he literally got called up in like July. So I think him in Citizens Bank Park would be fun for us. But still, like it's Gallen and Kelly. The bullpen's been pretty good, like really good in the playoffs. And then after that, I know their starting rotation's a question mark because I was looking at it before the playoffs started, and Gallen and Kelly are both in the threes in terms of ERA, but then after that, their next lowest was like a 5.4.
Yeah, their pitching does fall off a little bit. When the Phillies saw them, boy, was that June and July were those two series, the first series in Philly, and then the Phillies went out there. Their bullpen was not good.
No.
And I don't know if that's the case anymore. Like this Kevin Ginkel guy has pitched 4.1 innings in the postseason so far, and he has 8 strikeouts. He had a 2.4. Obviously, we know Paul Sewald is at the back end there, that confusing Mariners trade where every year the Mariners trade their closer and then go on a run to the playoffs, and then the team gets mad they traded the closer. I don't know what that's all about, but he's back there. He's not giving up a run this postseason. They have Mantiply, who did not have a good regular season, but he was an all-star last year, I think, and has been a good player. So they have some horses in the bullpen. I don't think Milwaukee and Dodger Stadium sucks atmosphere-wise. Like, it's not the same as what they're going to experience, but they do have some horses that I think can give the Phillies some issues. Obviously, with their offense, they hit a lot. They're hitting a lot. Monero, however you say that, right? The catcher prospect they got from the Blue Jays has 3 home runs in 5 games in the postseason so far. Carroll has 2, Marte has 2, Alec Thomas has 2, and then they have Gurriel, they have Pham, they have Walker, as I mentioned. There's a lot of pop here. The Phillies struggled to kind of keep them off the scoreboard throughout the season, I know. So the Phillies just went through the best offense since the 27 Yankees and gave up 8 runs in 4 games. I want to have faith in them, but this Diamondbacks offense definitely, I think, is hotter right now than the Braves were at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, and I think, it's kind of unrealistic to expect that same kind of output as far as like pitching goes to limit the Diamondbacks to whatever, like 8 or 10 runs in at least 4 games. Like, if it's not like completely impossible, obviously we talked about how good our arms are, but the Diamondbacks are scorching hot right now, and they do have the guys in the lineup to score. I think they kind of do it a little bit different. Obviously, like the Braves' MO is slug. The Diamondbacks are slugging right now, but I feel like throughout the course of the regular season, they were a big stolen base team. Like Carroll stole.
I was just going to bring that up. So they have 7 stolen bases in 5 games in the postseason so far.
I mean, obviously, like JT's pop time's the best in the league, and I think my biggest worry just comes, Nola's been so good in the playoffs, especially. We saw him in his start really do a good job of mixing his looks when guys got on base, and that the big inning didn't really like compile on him like we saw throughout the regular season. He mixed in the slide step a bunch and kind of kept those guys off balance. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works. Obviously, Acuna steals a lot for the Braves, but I feel like as a lineup, they don't put that type of pressure on you. Obviously, they apply it at the plate, but on the bases, they're kind of outside of Acuna and Harris when he gets on, like they're a bit more laxed. So I think in that area, the Diamondbacks could potentially cause issues for a guy like Nola. And I mean, even Wheeler, but more so, I'm just worried about the homer-stricken Aaron Nola coming back when he gets in those types of situations.
Yeah, Nola faced the 2 teams that during the regular season gave him the most fits with home runs, the Marlins and the Braves in the playoffs, and did not give up a homer to those two squads. So, that's something I look at. Maybe he has turned a corner, hopefully. This series is going to be interesting to me because if the Phillies take care of the first two in Philly, 4-0 in Philly so far this postseason, you go there with Ranger, who's been lights out in the postseason against this rookie with their backs up against the wall. You have a legit chance to go up 3-0 right there. The problem is with Kelly and Gallen, are we going to hit enough to get those 2 wins? Because I think you are going to have to hit. The Phillies had 10 runs in game 3. They had 3 runs in game 1. They had 4 runs in game 2, which included a 4-0 lead that they got early and then sat on and didn't do anything. And then game 4 was 3 solo home runs, 3 runs. They just pitched lights out, honestly. I need to see a little more from the offense, and I think it honestly starts with Schwarber either walking or hitting homers, kind of getting Stott back to where he's slapping singles the other way, and just Bohm doing something other than grounding in a double plays or striking out at pitches in the other batter's box.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of the Bohm struggles stemmed from Strider. Like the 6 or 7 at bats that he had against Strider in that series were atrocious.
Yeah.
Especially night 1. I think night 2 he saw it like a little bit better. He was just over anxious trying to make up for the first game.
Yeah.
But he just wasn't seeing it well. I think, like, for the most part, I trust Bohm. Like, he didn't have a great playoff start last year. Obviously, he had a good wild card, but then the DS, we kind of saw the same thing. And he had a good wild card this year and then struggled in the DS. So he had a good Padres series last year, so I'm hoping that he kind of gets back to that, gets back on the right foot. I think he's one of the guys where a few days off in between to kind of clear his mind. I think he's a very mental player. I don't think he has the short-term memory down to a science like some of the other older guys might. So I think a few days off, a few days with Kevin Long will help him and kind of get back to where he needs to be. I know you were probably going to talk about maybe flipping Castellanos and him in the lineup, and I think it makes sense, but I'm just not in favor of it. And I think you could kind of use some of what the Braves did as an example of why. They were going into the playoffs. They were really struggling with runners in scoring position, it seemed, and mostly Austin Riley. So they bumped Riley up to second, and he was horrible, and they got shut out for the first time in a year and a half.
Yeah, that was the other thing,
after they did that, and then automatically they went back to the same lineup that they pretty much used for 162 this year. So, like, I think the Phillies had a good series offensively. They did leave a lot of guys on, but I don't really love like flipping the lineup around now after you've just won 5 playoff games so far.
Yeah, the other thing is you talk about Bohm being a mental player. Moving him down might not help the situation. It's nice that you're getting that pop from Castellanos down at the bottom. I do wish there were guys on base when he's doing it, but I understand. I also think it's a little more protection for Bryce with how hot Castellanos is. People are going to actually have to try to pitch to Bryce, but I don't know. There's a lot to it. I'd like to see him come out in game 1, get a couple hits. I'm not saying they have to be home runs, but just, a double and maybe a single the other way or something, just showing that he's kind of back on track. It'd be nice.
Yeah. And going off like him being a mental guy, I think if you kind of look at Castellanos too, you were talking earlier about how he's a guy who kind of looks for that extra motivation, gets that edge. If you kind of look at his numbers, his like slug and OPS and stuff in that 6 or 7 spot is like exponentially higher than some other spots in the lineup. And I think that just kind of stems from him being like, okay, I don't want to hit here. Like I want to be higher up in the lineup. So like, let's slug our way back there. And it's gone on for a while now. I think he's been in that 6 or 7 spot for the majority of September and all of the playoffs. I think it just adds that added length to your lineup. And kind of like you were saying about how his home runs were timely, I don't know how everything goes if Bohm's kind of back there in that 7 spot slapping singles around. I think you obviously don't want the dead spot in like the 4 spot of the lineup, especially with the protection of Bryce like you were talking about. But I think there's definitely some sort of something to say about adding that type of pop to the 7 spot.
Yeah, I think so. And if Stott gets back on track and he's walking and hitting singles the other way again, then there is a guy on base for Castellanos because, Stott's been batting 5th or 6th. So, as long as Real Mito's not grounding into double plays, you should be able to actually have someone on base for him then. So, yeah, I would let it go for now. Maybe if you lose game 1 and the offense doesn't look good, you think about it. But as long as you're winning, I wouldn't touch it yet. But if we get into kind of a dire situation towards the middle part of this series, then I'd consider it. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on the Diamondbacks. Like, I don't know. This team is so weird to me. Like it's like slipped in with the 84 wins, and now they're as hot as could be. They get hit. That's what scares me. And they run too. Like they are an athletic team with guys like Marte, Carroll, Alec Thomas. They're gonna want to run. A lot of balls in the gap. The Phillies really have not had a lot of stressful innings. I'd say. I know like the 7th inning and the 9th inning in game 4, but like the Braves didn't put a ton of pressure on them throughout the series. Like even like they hit the two-run home runs in game 2 with I think the guy was on third base and I think the guy was on first base. Like and there was 1 out in one situation and 2 outs in the other. They weren't like crazy innings, even the 2 innings that the Braves scored 2 runs apiece in. It was just, boom, a home run. It wasn't like nuts stuff. This team is a little different to me where they'll single, they'll run, they'll put a ball in the gap and stretch it out to a triple. They could put a little more tension on the defense and, cause the pitchers have to keep them in mind with the run game too.
Yeah, and it's pretty much their whole lineup. Like Alec Thomas is a good runner. Perdomo is a good runner. Carroll's obviously an elite runner. Like they have guys everywhere that kind of puts that pressure. And I feel like defensively they're not gonna have too many miscues. I think Walker definitely won a Gold Glove.
Yeah, he has at least one.
Yeah, like Carroll and McCarthy and Thomas. Like Thomas,
Carroll will win a few, yeah.
But like Thomas is legitimately like Johan Rojas level good defensively. I know Rojas has only been here for a few months, but we've all kind of seen what he's able to do. Like Alec Thomas is that good for the Diamondbacks defensively too. I don't think their outfield arms are particularly good. Like I know Corbin Carroll has a noodle arm, but he can get to balls in the air for sure. So they're not going to make too many mistakes, even though they're a young team. You don't know what Citizens Bank Park will do to them, kind of being in that environment. But I think I lean more towards the side of ignorance is bliss, like you said earlier. I think that they're too young and too kind of naive to know that they're not supposed to be there. So, like, I think that they're not going to be too phased, and I think it's going to be a really tough series.
Yeah, like obviously this is an NL West team that comes off beating the Braves, and we had the same thing happen last year with the Padres beating the Braves. The thing is with me, like the Padres last year, like getting over the Braves was like the hurdle to them, and I don't want to say they ran out of gas, but I think maybe they got complacent after they beat the Braves or the Dodgers. They felt like they did what they were supposed to do. And I don't see that with this Diamondbacks team because they're like people think we shouldn't even be here. You know what I mean? Like I don't think getting over the Dodgers was a big thing to them. I just think winning was. So I don't think they're going to run out of gas and not show up. Like I say the Padres did, really show up that much last year. They had an opportunity to win way more games in that series than they did. So that scares me a little bit. I'm just, the thing I look at is you get their 2 best pitchers in your house. And that's big because the Phillies have been insane at home in the playoffs going back to last year. Only 2 losses, obviously, both of them to the Astros in the World Series. If you get through that hurdle, you're good, because the bottom half of the Phillies pitching is way better than the bottom half of the Diamondbacks pitching, especially with Ranger in Game 3. And then, what are we don't know what the Phillies are going to do in Game 4. This might be a little not 6-0, but Christopher Sanchez, little Rolenzen, Walker might get in there. I don't know, but I still think it's better than whatever the hell the Diamondbacks are going to put out there in Game 4. So if you get Game 4 in a situation where the Diamondbacks really have their backs up against the wall, where it's 3-0 or 2-1, that you have an opportunity there to really break this open. So I just think it's big that you find a way to win both at home against 2 really good pitchers.
Yeah, and I think, despite Gallen and Kelly being very good to elite level pitchers this year, I think overall as a staff, you do definitely have the advantage from top to bottom. And I think, depending on what the series looks like in a Game 4 thing, you might want to get maybe a little cute and have Sanchez open for Walker.
Mm-hmm.
I know Walker this year, his first inning ERA finished at a 7.4 or something.
Yeah.
So just have him avoid the first inning. I don't know what that kind of does psyche-wise to a starter, but it can't be worse than what he's been doing in the first inning. So you use the depth to your advantage. You have guys in the bullpen. Hopefully Wheeler and Nola kind of do what they do and eat up those innings, so you're not being pressed to burn these arms early, and then handle business at home, and then get out to Arizona with Ranger, who, we're talking about how good this lineup is, but their best hitter is a lefty. Walker and Longoria and Pham are righties, but a lot of what they do, I feel like they can play matchups, and their outfielders are lefties. So Ranger can have an effective start against this lineup. So use the depth to your advantage and kind of handle business at home. And it seems like, listening to some of the press conferences today, they understand that it's not an 84 win team making it to the NLCS as a fluke. I think it kind of helps that they were that team last year.
Yeah, definitely.
But they were, I think a lot of their statements today were very good in saying that they're approaching the series the right way.
Yeah, hopefully, as they should, I guess. The Diamondbacks might be this feisty, fun team, and I have really no problems with them until I remembered their manager threw a hissy fit about Matt Strum hitting Corbin Carroll for, wanted everyone ejected for no reason. Then I was like, maybe I don't like them that much, but I really don't hate them in any way or have reason to yet. So, it's a little, I don't know. There's no hate in this series, unlike the last 2 kind of had. There was a little burn there with the Marlins and the Braves. I would have liked to face the Dodgers, go back to the 08-09 days. But I just think between the Phillies look the part of a team that knows they came up short last year and they have a golden opportunity to get back there and finish it this time, and possibly against the team that beat them last year. And I think the Astros still being in the playoffs might even be a little bit of a driving factor for the Phillies. I just think this team is really hungry. Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Trey Turner locked in out of their minds. The pitching has been insane. Rob Thompson, now with a postseason under his belt as a manager, looks a lot better, I think, this postseason than last. They're playing great defense, led by Rojas and Stott. I just think that the Diamondbacks may have something good going for them. I just think this team is a train right now, rolling too fast for anyone to really stop them.
Yeah, and I think it kind of stems from the culture that they've created. And obviously, we've the last few years expected Septembers to go horribly, and we watch all the games and we see, how are they going to lose this one? We suffered through the bullpen years and everything, but the last 2 years, man, they just, obviously slow starts aside, they just have kind of morphed into this winning clubhouse that knows how to win these games. And I think it's at the point where even if they lose a game or two, we can trust them for the most part. They've bounced back at mostly every sign of adversity. You know, last year, the Hoskins era at first, splitting in Atlanta, it's like, oh God, this is where the wheels fall off. And then in the Padres game, or the Padres series, blowing that 4-0 lead, this is where the wheels fall off. And then they kind of just settle everybody down. And then this year, after that Harris double play, like, I know we were all like it's so difficult to bounce back from that, but then they go down 1-0 at home in the first 3 innings in that game, and they just kind of flipped the switch and snapped, and the offense got going, and the pitchers were really stingy about guys even getting on base, let alone scoring. So I think for the most part, like, we can trust them. I think Arizona's obviously very good, and they have the talent to kind of compete in a series like this, but I feel good with where the lineup and the pitching staff are at right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Phillies in 6. I don't know if are they going to be dedicated to the lose game 2 bit? All those were on the road, so I don't know. Like, this first one they have at home. This is new territory for the Phillies, because outside of the wild card round against the Marlins this year, this is the first series the Phillies have a home field advantage in this 2-year run, which is crazy. So it's a little different, obviously, and they thrived being the underdog and playing the 2 first games on the road. So this is a little different, but I want to say they win the first 2 in Philly. Ranger gets them in game 3, and then it gets a little dicey, honestly. I think maybe game 4 doesn't go so well with the put together starter, whatever the hell they decide to do. And then, Gallen there maybe gets one back on us out in Arizona, and then the Phillies come back and take care of it. I really could see that scenario happening. I know they go up 3-0 and then lose 2 straight. People are going to go nuts, but I think that honestly is a likely path.
Yeah, I think it goes 6. I think the Phillies win in 6, but I think we split at home and then win game 3 and 4, and then Gallen wins game 5, and then we come home and kind of handle business in game 6.
Yeah, I would like to sweep, obviously, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's gonna happen. Yeah, so that's gonna do it for this one. I guess next time we talk, we'll see if the Phillies are going to the World Series or not, which is crazy to talk about again. But big week ahead for the Phillies, so we'll see you then.